Good evening and welcome to Bermuda's News and Views. I'm your host, Don Burgess, and I have been so excited waiting for tonight to show up. It has three of my favorite people in the world in it, Robert,
Wow.
Randy, and Ellen Kate Horton. And just to tell a little bit of stories out of school, since we're talking about education. When I first came back to Bermuda in 1994, I met Robert Horton. I sat in an interview for a job position for the Bermuda Public School system, and Robert was there during the interview. So he was actually the first one of the three of you that I met, but I've come to love all three of you and just have lots of respect for you. So just in case you don't know and you can't read the names underneath, we have Ellen Kate Horton, welcome. Randy Horton.
Right. Good evening.
And of course, Robert Horton.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome. And we have him here because it's Black History Month, and we following the lead of the Hamilton Princess, who you guys are having a dinner on Saturday night, and we had Duranda Green on Tuesday of this week. But a spokesperson from the hotel said, the Black History Month celebration has become a beloved annual tradition at the Hamilton Princess, which strives to honor the importance of Black Bermudian culture, community, and history to the rich tapestry that makes up Bermuda. This year's celebration follows a theme of education in recognition of famed educators. Okay, so we'll start. I'm going to ask an open-ended question. I want you all to jump in and just answer or respond to each other like siblings do sometimes.
I shall defer to my elders.
Okay. And this is the kind of show we're going to have tonight, just like this. How does it feel to receive this honor from the Hamilton Princess? And we're going to start with Ellen Kate, since you're
the most incredible situation when we got that email and I saw all three names. All I could think of was, wow, are they serious? Yeah, it's just amazing. It's wonderful. It's just an awesome thing that all three of us could be there. I'm honored, and I'm honored
I would echo that sentiment, Don. I have attended all of the Princess events, the Black History Month events thus far. I never dreamed that I would one day be sitting as an honoree. So as Ellen said, it's a great honor. We're humbled, we're proud, and we're excited and looking forward to the event.
Yeah, I feel the same, and I'm particularly excited too because I worked at Hamilton Princess for about 15 years. It was 13 years. I worked at Hamilton Princess as their director of learning, and so it's go back in this way, and certainly honored, and particularly with my siblings. It's an honor, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
Now, why did all three of you decide to get into education as a career? I'm assuming that education in the home was a very valued commodity and respected, but I'll let you guys each tell your story.
Well, I can tell you that I initially wanted to be a mortician. Education was the last thing. I wasn't the best boy in school. And so I definitely did not want to be a teacher. That was not top priority for me. And it happened because my mother, after I finished Berkeley, graduated from Berkeley, my mother started to send me out to see if I could find a job to make some money so I can go to that mortuary college, which I was accepted at, Philadelphia Mortuary College. And she was on the PTA at West End Primary School even after all of us left. And the principal at the time, Mrs. Snate, asked her, "What's Randy doing?" So she said, "The good for nothing thing is doing nothing." And Mrs. Snate said, "Send him over here to West End." And so I went over to West End, and I began to help with the kids in their math, who were getting ready for Berkeley, and I helped in the PE department. And hey, so she wrote it. Ever since then, it's been I really got to enjoy teaching, and yeah, here we are.
Well, the kind of interesting thing, I was sitting there thinking, like, you did get to do a little bit of mortuary work during your career, because how many bodies did you leave on the football field?
Yeah.
I like that, Don, but I would say and I think this applies to all three of us, when we left the Berkeley, we secured employment. We were hired by the government as our first jobs. We were teachers. Can you believe it? Fresh out of high school, we were assigned teaching responsibilities at some of the island's primary schools. And whereas whilst I was at Berkeley, I had no intention of becoming a teacher. I had wanted to become, believe it or not, either a priest or a lawyer. Well, the priest fell aside, and as did the law. I taught, and then was awarded a government scholarship, teacher training. It was economic realities in many ways which drove me to teaching. I went abroad on a government teacher training scholarship, and the rest is history. I grew to love the profession, as I do to this day. It's a great profession.
And I too received a scholarship, but chose not to take it because the scholarships were taking you to England. And I, like the rest, I taught right out of the Berkeley, and I didn't want to go to England. My mom was not happy with me. She said, "You're not going to manage. How can you go to school? You have to go to school." So I said, "Well, I'll work." And I worked at American International, made enough money for my first year, went to university in the US for the first year. We had to pay. And I won a scholarship while there. So that carried me through that. And Randy had come home not too long afterwards. So he had to send me spending money sometimes to get through.
Now, what was some of the joys that you found in teaching once you got into the profession?
I think,
gosh,
for me,
innumerable.
The greatest joy is just seeing the light in students' eyes, seeing students, when they get something, when they learn something. I mean, that was an absolute joy, and just to see young people being able to make responsible decisions was so important, and that has always been, exciting for me to see the young people who are in the schools that I taught at, learning and being bright-eyed. Always, it was great.
I concur. When I finished university, I went off to Kent State to do chemistry. I was studying physical chemistry at Kent State, had a graduate assistantship. So my goal was not to go into education, even though I had taught. My goal was I saw myself in a lab somewhere. However, the Kent State shootings of 1970, I was 2 courses short of the degree, and I withdrew. And no amount of money could have made me go back to Kent State. It was that traumatic because, I happened to be out on the field when the kids were killed. You watch people drop, you're watching guns amidst you, the National Guardsmen. Hey, we all ran. I came home, and that September got a job at Warwick Secondary. Loved it. Went off from Warwick Secondary and to Rutgers and did my master's in education instead of chemistry. And since then, it was just smooth sailing. I absolutely loved Warwick Secondary, loved the children. Like Randy, great joy to see them learn and move forward. It just was awesome.
And I echo those sentiments. And I think today, after, all those years in teaching, I derive such joy in looking at my former students and the roles that they are playing in this community. They're serving the community in a variety of areas, and they're serving with distinction. And that makes me feel very proud. Not all of my students were those kinds of successes, but we've all become great friends, and we reflect on our days at Berkeley. They were wonderful, and I have often made the statement on that of my 43 years of public service, my 18 as a teacher and an administrator at the Berkeley Institute were by far the most enjoyable and fulfilling. You see, I didn't have to put up with ministers in those days, which I had to put up with when I went into politics, into the civil service. Into the civil service. I would like Randy to comment on that.
Yeah, I can certainly say the same thing. I think, as I tell people, the best 10 years of my life, my working life, and the best 10 years were at Warwick Sec when I was the principal at Warwick Sec. It was just an exciting experience. It was exhilarating, to get up. And in fact, I remember my wife saying to me one time, "You better marry Warwick Secondary," because I took, great interest in ensuring that all was well at Warwick Sec. It was a wonderful experience. We had great teachers. Alan Kate was one of them. We had great teachers, and we worked together as a wonderful team. And it's an experience, being the ministers of the different portfolios, being the Speaker of the House. None of it came close to the satisfaction I received as principal of Warwick Sec.
Yeah, and not that Ellen Kate was not just a teacher there, because you were acting deputy for a while as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
You know that I was at Warwick Sec first, and it's an interesting story because my principal at the time, Mr. Williams, said to me, "It's time for Randy to come home. I'd like him to be my deputy." And I thought, yeah, good idea. And he said, and I had just finished my master's in education, so I had been off for a year. And he said, "Do not tell them you're coming back yet. Let me get Randy settled." So I said, okay, got Randy settled. And he says, "Okay, we're straight." And the ministry said to me, "That's not a directive. You have to go to a different school." I said, "That's not happening." And so he says, "No, we're straight at Warwick Sec." So I called the other teacher who was being sent to Warwick Sec, and I said, "I don't think you ought to show up at Warwick Sec because I'm not showing up at your school." And the rest is history. We went there together. We worked well together. Yeah, it was an awesome time. And, we often laugh about the fact that when the children said Horton's coming, nobody cared which Horton. They just went and did what they were supposed to do. Yeah. They were really good times. And today
I would like to add, because all of us had such enjoyment with teaching. Earlier, I said that it was my hope to become a lawyer. And whilst at Berkeley during the earlier years, I actually made application to law school in the United Kingdom, was accepted, informed the Board of Governors that I would leave. And then they called me in and made an offer, which I guess I accepted for two reasons. I loved teaching. Also, it was stroking my ego, which was as big as my afro in those days. They offered me the post of deputy principal. I was just 28. And I said, well, I can't say no. And I accepted, and I have absolutely no regrets. Now, some of my Berkeley students might express regret, I'm sure. And if any of them are listening, I'm sure they do. But I have none. And Randy referred to the colleagues, the teachers, we had a wonderful teaching staff at the Berkeley at that time. And that just helped to make the school function so effectively.
I had the opportunity to teach with Bobby as well at the Berkeley. That was an awesome time too. But the funny thing at the Berkeley, when I walked into the assembly for the first day, I had been in Warwick Sex Assembly, and our children were decent. Nobody talked when they went into assembly. We acted right. And there were some children at the Berkeley, and I'm saying, is this the Berkeley Assembly? The funny thing, Bobby walked into the stage door. There's a door at the back of the stage. Silence. Absolute silence. Because, he knew every single name of every single child from wherever they were. And they knew he knew. So it was awesome. And my experiences were similar in that the children responded so well to us.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So
The other thing that we showed that we really cared about these children, and did all that we could to help them to be successful. I mean, I remember, I think I mentioned, being at Warwick Sec and going out and visiting the homes of students and just to see how they were, why they were having the problems that they were having at school. Just meant so much to the parents in particular, when they would see you come, they would see that you had a deep interest and love for their children. And I can say that I also taught at Berkeley. I taught at Berkeley after West End. I taught at West End, which is our alma mater, and then at Berkeley, our alma mater. And I taught at Berkeley, and I finished Berkeley. That's when I went away. I went back to school, went to Rutgers, where, in fact, I was thinking about maybe changing. I did a degree in economics at Rutgers, and was thinking about getting out of education. But then, after I finished my undergraduate degree, I was going to do graduate work. I did the LSAT, I did the GRE, and in fact, I got accepted in the business school, the law school, and the School of Education. And I said, I took the fastest master's degree going, and that was in education administration. And then they started to call from Bermuda and asked me to come in. First of all, Sands, Mr. Cox, Eugene Cox, wanted me to come to Sands as the principal. And I said, no, sir, I'm not ready for that yet. I might have a master's degree, but I'm not ready to be a principal. And I worked under Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. I used to spend my Friday nights with Mr. Williams talking about school, talking about work, how we're going to make the place better. That was my Friday nights when I came back, when I first went to Warwick Sec.
Well, part of the thing I was sitting there thinking, like, you all were thrust into leadership roles at a young age.
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, Bobby, you were only 28, and you're teaching.
Bobby's always been ahead of himself.
Bobby was 10, I believe. You were 10.
Yes. Bobby is almost 2 years younger than I, almost 2. He went to Berkeley the year before he should have.
Yes, I was only 10. I think really, with hindsight, I went a little too early because I was still very playful. I didn't apply myself as diligently as I should have done. I had fun. But to respond to your question about assuming leadership at a young age, it just seemed so absolutely natural. And I think because it was at Berkeley, because it was in an environment with which I am so familiar, it wasn't a challenge. It was a labor of love. I really did enjoy it. Again, I don't know if all of my students will echo that comment.
Dan, one of our my favorite experiences at Warwick Sec, when we talk about taking care of our children and loving our children was, and Randy can attest to that, we would go into the homes, and Lloyd Rayner was our home visitor. Lloyd James was our home visitor. And he went to a home with me, and we were really concerned about what we saw in that home. And the young man's dad had passed, and his mom was ill. And he started missing school. So, you know, the situation was grim. What we did as a school, led by me, I organized the senior students. We walked 50 miles. All the Randy and the other teachers were out on the street all night, just in case anybody couldn't make it. And we walked from Warwicksack all the way up to Dockyard, went back, you know, President Kennedy had done that 50-mile walk. And we did this for charity. Most of our children made that walk, and our senior class. And we were able to give to a charity and take care of that young man and his family. And he never forgot it. You know, he never forgot it. And now, mind you, we had all done the walk before when we were Berkeleyites. I will say that I'm the only one who made it.
I certainly did not.
I couldn't if I could make it.
I don't even think Randy, did you walk? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I remember Ellen
Yes,
Kate.
he did. He walked down as far as Paget. Next thing he was missing.
I
They
made
said-
the airport. I made the airport. I just couldn't do the return journey.
Yeah.
We were young and energetic then, Don.
So Ellen shared one of her favorite memories. Robert, do you have one?
Oh my goodness, I have so many. One of mine is an amusing one, actually. We had at Berkeley a graduation ball every year, a wonderful occasion, and it was always followed by a party at the home of one of the students. And on this occasion, we were at the party, there was a pool, we were all standing around the pool. I had on my tux and everything, and, you know, I guess I thought I was all that, and I stood at the end of the pool, and someone said, Mr. Horton, we're going to push you in. And I said, you wouldn't dare. And the next thing I knew, I was in that pool. When I came out, just gasping with rage, not a soul was in sight. But eventually, they crawled out and confessed, and we had a great big laugh. And I do think that's one of the most special memories I had at Berkeley, because it was mischief, but it showed friendship, it showed camaraderie, and I shan't ever forget that. I think one or two hoped that I would drown, but I was able to swim.
For me, actually, you know, it's interesting with this being Black History Month. For me, one of the moving experiences I had at Berkeley was, in fact, when the students boycotted the school sports because they wanted Black studies.
Oh, yes.
School. And I happened to have been the PE teacher. And so the students, so 5 of the students came into my office to tell me what they were going to do, that they were going to boycott. And so I told them, I said, look, hey, let me go down and do my job. Let me line the field, do all that I need to do as the PE teacher. And then we come down, we run a few races, and then I'll hand the mic over to you, and you've got everybody's attention. And, that's what happened. And at the end, we had Mr. Ferbert. In fact, it was Ottawa Simmons Jr., who I gave the mic to, but the students was Ottawa Simmons. It was Arlene Brock.
Michelle.
It was Ralph Ferbert. It was
Michelle Caldoun.
Michelle Caldoun and Wanda
Parenti.
They were the students. And it was moving to me that students had taken the position that I did, and I felt like I should have supported them. So that was a special occasion at Bach, and then at Warwick Sac. So many. But one situation where it's what we really don't know, we always do. I say it's important to do what's best for the student. And sometimes you do it and you don't even know what you're doing for that kid. And I got a letter from a student, maybe about 6 or 7, 8 years ago, who said, Mr. Horton, I've been trying to say this to you for 25 years. And she related to me an experience that I clearly remembered and how I interacted with her and helped her gain her self-esteem, because she didn't have a father at home, and then she was having all kinds of problems. And she said, Mr. Horton, that meeting I had with you when you sat down with me and took me through some steps where I could, survive. I thank you for it. And I remembered the situation, but I certainly didn't know it had the impact that it did. So that was very special.
So often that happens. Years later, you run into someone, and I had a similar one. Remember, I don't know, Randy, it might have been before you got there, but we had 6 students. Remember the Cedar Grove School?
Yeah.
When Cedar Grove closed, we had 6 students come down to Warwick Sac, and people didn't want to give up their time. And I gave up every free period and my lunch hour to teach these 6 boys. And just things like teaching them to read and write their names, to write their parents' names, to fill out applications. And we worked on that. Years later, I was a PS at the time. And I mean, that's a lot of years later, because I was 20 years out of Bermuda, 18 years out of Bermuda. But anyway, he came to me, he said, Miss Horton, you remember me? And I called his name. He was so excited. He said, well, I have something to show you. Took me outside, showed me a truck with his name on it. And he said, I have my own business. Thank you so much. I don't know where I would have been had you not put the time with us. And, hey, that's moving. That's moving.
Those statements by Ellen and Randy remind me of the often quoted statement that a good teacher affects eternity. He never knows where his influence stops. And we've just heard some examples of the influence that we have as teachers, and students greatly appreciate our efforts. And to move to the current situation, it always troubles me when I hear people, teachers, speaking of their challenges in school. And they oftentimes are very dejected, they are frustrated, and they sometimes talk of giving up. And I implore them not to give up. The children need you more than they perhaps recognize. But I know today teaching is more difficult than it was when we were in the classroom all those years ago. But
Don would know that.
Yeah. Well, I can
yes,
tell you,
Don would know because he's been in a school recently.
So like during the pandemic, I know a lot of teachers with all the COVID restrictions. So it was just not a enviable situation to be in. But now that we're in a better spot, so hopefully things are good. Although with some changes we don't like, and we don't really, I'm going to choose my words carefully here, because I know there's a protest happening tonight that I know Ellen Kate's trying to get to.
Oh, yes.
That she wants to preserve the history of West End over
Our school.
Our school.
He West End school.
This Black History Month.
I'll give you a moment to get on your pulpit and preach.
It is literally 153 years old, I believe, the oldest school in the English-speaking Western Hemisphere. And we have done some research. We have gone throughout the United States, South America. Now, in South and Central America, there may be a couple of schools Spanish speaking, but we have never found another English speaking one. And we have some pretty strong people helping us to look for, what is happening. And it's just a travesty that you would think to even touch such a school. Actually, all of those in Somerset, every family in Somerset would have started, we all have our history at the West End School. And even those young people from Somerset who are now at Somerset Primary, their parents and grandparents had nowhere else to go. And if you were Portuguese, the same thing. You went to West End. So, our parents went to West End. And it's just done something that is very dear to our hearts. And, we think of the racism that we have endured throughout the school system. And, it's time to fix it. It's time to make it right.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
an opportunity.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm
Now,
reminded of John, if I can just say this, I'm reminded of a Latin statement. In our day, we did Latin at Berkeley, and there's a statement.
You did
that.
No, he remembered that. We all
I
did
don't
that.
know about them, but I was good at
in the
Latin.
class do Latin.
That was a subject as dead could be. It killed the ancient Romans. Now it's killing me.
That's what they used to say. I said it too, but I loved it. But there's a statement, si monumentum requiris. If you look for a monument, just look around you. And I think of that with West End Primary School. It has been a monument in our community for a century and a half. And I just wish that it'll be recognized, it will be recognized by the powers that be. Look at us. Look at the entire West End community. There's passion and love for West End Primary. There really is.
Absolutely.
Now, I know you guys are all, and still are, because teaching doesn't mean you stop outside the classroom. There's always teachable moments. But was there a particular educator that was influential to you that was sort of like your role model?
Well, I can tell you that for me, if I look at me at the Berkeley, Don, I look at Berkeley, and the first 2 years at Berkeley, I was brilliant. I was in the top 6 of my class, and did very well all the way to go. Then when I got to the 3rd year, something happened, and I started just running astray. And in fact, at the end of my 3rd year, I think my average was below 50. But there was a teacher there who said, "Hey, this boy's got too much talent," and he persuaded the leaders of the school. She did rather persuade the leaders not to keep me back, to move me forward to Form 4, and that was Merle Brock Swan Williams. She took hold of me and said, "Look, boy, it's time for you to straighten up," and straighten up I did, because she came and she took a hold of me, and then when I went into the 4th year, I was not in the top stream class, which was full West. I was in Form 4, I think it was, but I went in and came top of the class that that first term after I was put in there. So I caught myself, and as a result of me catching myself, I was able to go through, continue on, get my Cambridge, and then go on to further education. So yeah, if you want one teacher, and that's one of several, but one teacher in particular that I'm always thankful for is Merle Brock.
And I think we all were. That was a tough brother and sister team at that time. Mr. Brock.
Oh yeah, he was
Mansfield Brock.
Yeah.
And Merle, yeah, his sister. amazing people. But we had some serious teachers.
Ellen, I know which teacher you will say influenced you.
Oh, of course.
Mr. Tatum.
Mr. Tatum.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he
You
had
know.
influence on me too, because that was the other subject that I had.
But your math wasn't as good as Ellen Kate's.
Yeah.
I never said that. I said
Mr.
I enjoyed math and I performed very well at math, and I went on
Okay.
to be a teacher of mathematics.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. His math was better than Bobby's.
Definitely.
But Bobby was the language person. Mr. Tatum, certainly.
TNT.
Thomas Neville Tatum.
Right.
Dynamite.
TNT, we used to call him Dynamite.
Right.
TNT.
Right.
But I was ready to please. I mean, I was good. Now, Mr. Brock will want me to tell you that he started me off because he had me in the younger years. But once I got to third year and onward, Mr. Tatum was the teacher. He was a calm man. He was wonderful. And we just had so much fun until my 5th year when we had a difference of opinion. And but I still won his math prize. Yeah. One of the times, Don, I so loved math. I would go home and literally, we had textbooks. I worked every single problem in the back of my math books. Every single problem. When I did my Cambridge in math, I didn't drop a point. And,
Wow.
Barkley got a note to say that, but it was just me. I loved it. I was good at it. And he helped me on the way. Yeah, so definitely. And so he had such an impact. And he then became the principal. He was the first principal of Warwick State, where we were. And while Randy was my minister, we named the new school after him, so it became T.N. Tatum Middle School.
That was really what drove me to do that too.
Yeah.
Tatum was such a great.
He deserved those
He was
efforts.
a wonderful role model for all of us. A wonderful educator. And Don, mine, my side was the language arts. I guess. And this is merely upon reflection, I don't think I was consciously aware of the influence this person was having on me. But Dr. Marian Robinson, later permanent secretary, she was a master teacher of English language and literature. And I used to admire the way in which she taught. I don't think my performance was at a high level in her class. In fact, she often reminds me that it wasn't. But I was inspired by her knowledge of and passion for the subject. That's one teacher who inspired me. But there was another, the late Edwina Smith. She was a Latin teacher. And I think I was inspired by her just commitment to teaching. But I should never forgive her for one saying to my mother, when I was the second year and we had a parent-teacher meeting, and Edwina Smith said to my mother, Mrs. Horton, now remember I was kind of mischievous, Mrs. Horton, Robert is the kind of child that only a mother could love. Isn't that a dreadful thing to say? But I loved her nonetheless, and she inspired me. She did.
I'm gonna go ahead.
Go back to when I was teaching, and somebody that really inspired me in teaching. Actually, once I started teaching, I was teaching at West End School, and that's Sinclair Richards. Sinclair Richards was the first principal I taught under, and I was at West End School. And I'll never forget, I was on the Bermuda national football team. I was the PE teacher at West End. Mr. Richards had told the kids that I'm on the national team and I'm going away to Chicago next week. This was on the Friday. What happened was that the coach dropped me from the team for some ridiculous reason, and So I had to go back to school on Monday morning. And so I'm saying, what are the children going to say? You know, Mr. Horton, you know, it was just built up because Mr. Richards built me up in the assembly. But Mr. Richards, you know, took a hold of that situation and, you know, told the students that said behind every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. And I mean, what he did to me, to help me, you know, keep my self-esteem, because I was not feeling so good after that had happened. I mean, I remember Mr. Richards forever for what he did in helping me through that challenge.
Okay. Now, I want to be respectful of Ellen Kate's time because you wanted to get over the list.
No, we're fine.
Okay,
We're
okay,
fine.
great. Then we'll just continue chatting and laughing and and having a good time.
The other situations covered.
Okay, great. All right. So, did you guys have a favorite class that you taught, or maybe might have been a subject that over the time, or one specific year, one specific class that you absolutely adored?
I think I can't choose a class like that. I can say that I enjoyed most of my classes. I can think of one class though that where about 6 of the boys would show up at our house on a regular, and they would come up on a Saturday like they were big friends. It was fun though. So yeah, that and another thing that I will never forget. I taught a young man, and I used to watch him walk up the steps. When I first went to WorkSec, I taught a bit of English, and he wrote an essay for me. And when I read that essay, I thought, this is real. It was all about being in the hospital, and it was a story about the hospital. And I would watch this little boy, and he would walk up the steps, and I thought, what a strong kid, because the children were running all around him, making their way up the steps, and he just took his time walking up the steps. And I later talked with his family and his aunt and found out what the situation was. Anyway, fast forward, he was the first excellent at mathematics. The first student of mine who went abroad to university, and remember that WorkSac was a relatively new school at that time. And I think it was 68, was it 68 when WorkSac started? Yeah, up at the...
67.
Yes, and it came down to the building where we were a few years later. And he went abroad, went to university, and was the first student back to teach with me, taught mathematics. Okay. So that's very special.
Yeah, that must have been a real thrill.
Oh, yeah.
It would be. I think in response to your question as to a favorite class or what have you, well, Berkeley students, generations of them argue as to which year group that I believe to be his favorite. You know, the class of 79, the class of 75, they all argue. I made them all believe that they were my favorite. And they will argue to this day. But I do have a favorite, but I'll never reveal it publicly.
But Don, let me tell you something about Bobby. This not a mathematician, but great memory and great at figuring things out mathematically. If I call a name to him, he said, oh, class of such and such. He'd be such and such. He'd be this age. He can do that with almost all of his students. I don't even remember which students were in the same year sometimes. I remember them all.
I can tell you, like the other day when we were doing a little practice and Bobby was on first, I started to talk to him about like, the first time we met, and he could recall me sitting in the office and doing the interview with me.
Of course.
At that point. So I'm thinking that's pretty impressive because that was like almost 30 years ago now.
Yes,
That's real. He
absolutely.
has an amazing memory.
Okay. So we're going to wrap
Let
up here, but we're going to show.
Yes, I was just going to reflect on some
Okay.
terms you asked the question about, the best class or whatever, right? For me, it was the best school. And I'm going to tell you that what impressed me most about WorkSec was our ability to empower those students to be able to make decisions. Because I strongly believe in citizenship education, and that students should not only be great at math and English and science and the like, but needed to be good citizens. One of the things that we did at WorkSec, and the student body did it, because the students, we had a student council there that was selected by the students. Teachers didn't select who was going to be on the student council. The students themselves selected after students had made presentations as to why they should be on the student council, or who should be the student council chairman. And those students, I was so impressed with, who came up, in fact, with the fact that we had shirt jacks. Remember when we first, first student with shirt jacks? And that was because of the students actually came to me and said, this is what we would like to see happen. And they came and they sat down with the teachers and came up with what it is. Mrs. Pearman was the only lady side, and then came up with what would be the best year. It was the students who made that. And that's what I got a big joy out of WorkSec, just seeing those students, be able to take charge and be what I call citizens with great responsibility.
Yeah, I remember that.
I want to give each one of you one last chance to say something, maybe that I haven't asked you or you haven't joked amongst yourselves already, before we sign off tonight. And we're going to start with Ellen Kate.
Randy's older.
Okay, we'll start with the elder statesman.
If you want to know, I just tell you that, listen, if I got a math problem, I go to Ellen Kate. If I got a language problem, I go to Bobby.
That's true.
I can tell you that, listen, I think I mentioned earlier about the fact that being a minister and being the Speaker of the House and all of that was great, but was never what WorkSec was in my life. And I can tell you, though, that when I look at my brother and sister, the support that they've both given me, Bobby, when I became a minister, was my permanent secretary. Also, whenever I had an important speech to make, hey, I always read it by him. I got him to fix the language for me, And Kate, on the math side, always was there to provide the support that was necessary. So I'm been blessed, because I'm the older one, and I just point to him saying, look, it's time for you to help me here, or time for you to and then, yeah.
We didn't do it just because he ordered us, though, But I'll tell you something that strikes me. People probably would not know this. When Randy was at WorkSec, he would go abroad to play football every Friday.
Right, weekends, yeah.
We had a Volkswagen. Randy had a Volkswagen. By the way, when we went to school, Mama still made our lunch, and we all had lunch kits. And if a sandwich was mixed up, Bobby would drive from Berkeley to come to WorkSec to change the sandwich. We didn't buy food those days. He and Joe Blades would drive to WorkSec to change a sandwich.
That's right.
That's real. Randy would be going abroad, and that flight was supposed to leave at 3:30. We couldn't leave WorkSec until 3:15. They were the days when the airport knew he was coming.
Right, they held the plane up.
They held the plane. And we would drive, Randy and I would go to that airport. I'm thankful that we're here today to tell that story. But there wasn't as much traffic on the roads.
Mhm.
And I guess maybe all the cops knew he had to make that plan because we were never stopped. But we used to jet on down to the airport.
That was with the Cosmos and the Diplomats, right?
Right.
That was the Cosmos.
Diplo- yeah, because I played with the Cosmos. Then when I came home, I played with the Dips, and they allowed me to, then the education department allowed me to be able to leave on early on Fridays to go and play. They gave me permission for 1 year to be able to do that.
That was something, I tell you. Yeah.
And I guess my concluding remark would be, and I will cite our school's motto, Berkeley's motto, Respicate Finem, keep the end in view. And that strengthens me, and I hope it has strengthened generations of Berkeleyites, that whatever they do, be mindful of outcomes, be mindful of the contribution they want to make to the community. And I think that is philosophically a wonderful, wonderful thing to bear in mind. Keep
That's great.
the end in view.
Absolutely.
Respicate
Respectful.
Finem.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Every Berkeleyite can quote that, whether he is
Every Berkeleyite.
20 or 100. He knows our motto.
And then also, and every word, and I remember that, our beloved
Yes.
ever, and then every word SAC student remembers the 3 V's:
BNV.
vision,
Yes.
Vista, victory.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. I just really appreciate all three of you and what you've meant for Bermuda
you.
students over many decades, and the inspiration that you have provided. The award you're going to receive at the Hamilton Princess on Saturday night is very well deserved. I don't think very many people would even try to argue against that. So I hope you enjoy your evening, and I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you,
Thank
Don.
you,
Don.
Don. Thank
It's
you.
been
I
our
enjoyed
privilege.
it.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Don, I remember one thing. I now remember you doing this great article on my grandfather about cricket when you were doing those
Warren Simmons?
cricket.
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
And thank you.
So on behalf of Burr News, again, we thank you. And for our listeners tonight, thank you for tuning in and learning a little bit more about Bermuda's history. And as always, have a very Bermudaful evening.